CardGamesTV1 Podcast. I'm trying to do some a live video podcast as well as, obviously just the audio version. So, new card game, One Piece card game. Not much information out there right now. We just got some of the rules, so we got a basic idea of how the game is going to play, what we can do, can't do in the game, right? It's a lot like Dragon Ball Super with some Force of Will elements to it. So there's a lot of similarities to Dragon Ball Super, so it'll be easier for those who play Dragon Ball Super to be able to play this game. You will need, up to 4 cards, per each, card that you want to play in your deck. 50 card deck plus the leader. So, and obviously start off with a leader, which is nice. And you won't be using your cards as mana source like in Dragon Ball Super. You'll be using what's called Dawn cards. And those will be your mana source, your resources that you use to pay for the cards you're going to play. Then there's 3 different types of cards. There's the character cards, which are essentially like battle cards, stuff you could attack with. You got your event cards, which I guess they're like extra cards or something like that, right? And then you got your stage cards. Don't know what they do specifically. They might be like field cards, like in Yu-Gi-Oh! Or enchantments. They could be enchantment cards or something. We'll see what they, later on do. So there's, obviously there's resources out there that you can go. There's, you can go follow their official website, and find their official YouTube and their official Facebook page. There are some Facebook groups you can join, of course, where you can, talk to other people who are also interested in the game and learn more about the game. One of the things I, tend to try to do, when I get into a new game, what I tend to do when I get into a game, period, is I try to transfer all my experience and knowledge from other card games and bring them over. So that's why I was mentioning the fact that this game is a lot like Dragon Ball Super, and Dragon Ball Super is a lot like Duel Masters, the original game that this was, the mechanics were based off of. That's the reason why we take cards that we normally would play in the game and just put them upside down into our energy area and use them as energy, because that came from Duel Masters. And the idea of just using stuff to pay for stuff came from Magic, and the list goes on and on, right? Card game history. But we were trying to. But the thing is like, yeah, that's not always been a popular thing, to have stuff in your deck dedicated just for the purpose of being used as resources. Now we're used to it, but is at the same time, it's the fact that like most players, do prefer. Like, we're not against the idea of paying to play certain cards, like, the whole resource management system. It's just the fact that the cards we could play being resources tend to be an issue. Like, it's okay if it was an option, right, that you could use them as resources, right? But it's the fact that it's part of the game mechanics where you have to use them as resources. Like, you have to play a card as resource, or you won't have a resource. Like, you won't have energy or mana, whatever you want to call it, or dawn, right, if you don't sacrifice a good playable card just to get that resource to use to play cards. So giving up cards to play cards tends to not be that popular, but people, still like playing these card games regardless. But what's cool about this game is that, a lot like Force of Will, where they was like, we don't want the lands or the resource or the energy, cards to be inside, to be in the main deck. Let's put it in its own separate deck. So this has a Dawn area. So it has a separate Dawn deck specifically for this resource, which is nice. Always been a fan of that. Always wanted Magic to incorporate that into its game. But it's been so many years and they haven't done it. It's been 20 plus years and they haven't, changed that up. They could. They so absolutely could. I doubt it'll affect too many cards. Like there's probably a couple cards that says, you got to get a land specifically from your, library specifically as versus a deck, right? Or they could always just change the wording where it's like, you know, your mana deck or mana library is, counts as a library. It's just a separate library, but it still counts towards library, so it still counts towards any effect that says go grab a land from your library or your deck or something like that, right? Anyway, so I take a lot of my knowledge and experience from other card games and transfer it over. Makes it easier to pick up the game, get good at the game, and just even seeing from this image that I'm looking at off to my side, we can already I'm like, yeah, it wouldn't be that hard for me to pick up this game and get used to it and play it. It's pretty simple. I'm used to this method of playing already, so it would be easy for me to get into this game. So it'd be easy to build decks and stuff like that. I do enjoy Dragon Ball Super. It's really fun. But I've already done so much with it already in the past 4 years. So it's like, yeah, I would like to try something different. Something, different IP, right? And try something different. A different way of playing, because card games are card games, right? That's why I play multiple different types of card games. There's some players out there that just love the idea of like, no, my card game is better than the other card game, blah blah blah. There's always a rivalry, which is unnecessary, but it is a thing. There's people out there that just I guess I use the term elitist. They're like, oh no, this is the best way of playing card games. This is the best game ever. Blah blah blah. It's like, okay for you, but not necessary for everybody. And card games in general are card games, which is why I'm pointing out that fact that I take my experience and knowledge from one game and transfer it over to another game, because all card games are pretty much the same. Every card game is going to have an aggro deck, a mid-range, a control deck, a mill deck, a burn deck, a ramp deck, and the list goes on and on of the different types of plays and strategies and game, and decks you could build. There's going to be a preset method strategy, right? There's going to templates, as it were. It's like, okay, this is how you play aggro. This is how you play mid-range. This is how you play control. We have terms that we use from other card games that we transfer them over, because like I said, a lot of similarities. Like, oh, this card game has a mechanic that's just like another card game that I already played. So this gives most people who have played a lot of other card games an advantage. And people who are fans of card games are typically do bounce around playing other card games, like myself. That's why I'm CardGamesTV, right? Not just Yu-Gi-Oh TV or Dragon Ball Super TV, or just like card games in general. Because I like card games in general. I like to build decks, play decks, of course, right? Play the games, and then master them. Understand the core of the game. Obviously figuring out how to win consistently, which is very popular, obviously, right, for competitive players. Casual players, to each their own. They like to win, of course, but sometimes they just like to have fun. So even losing a lot is fun for them. To each their own. But I'm always trying to find the OTKs and the FTKs and combos. I'm always trying to find the things that aren't obvious, that aren't pre-made, things that even the creators of the game didn't even think about. There was a time that was like, oh, there's no OTK in Dragon Ball Super, and it's like, well, that's incorrect. There is a combination of cards you can use that can potentially OTK on certain turns, whether it be turn 3, turn 4. There are combos. It's just a matter of figuring out those combos, and then of course sharing the information so more people know about it, which is what I tend to do, share that information. But ironically, I don't get the credit that I deserve, considering the fact I'm the one that put in the effort to figure it out and then shared it. Right? Nobody else was sharing it. I know that for a fact, because I looked to see if anybody else already figured it out, already figured out something. I do go like on YouTube, right, and type up, let's say Dragon Ball Super OTK or OTK deck, right? And just put that. That's all I need to put, and I should see some results, right? Results that says OTK or FTK. Obviously deck as in deck profiles, and Dragon Ball Super, the card game, right? So just by typing that up, I should see a whole bunch of results of players. I mean, of videos of like, oh yeah, OTK. But then I don't. So then I'm like, okay, I guess people are not trying to find OTKs or FTKs in the game. They're just fine playing the game at the most basic level. All right. Well, I like to find and do what no one else is doing, So, break the rules as they were. So I'll try to find them. Just like in most card games that I've played, especially games that we had to pay energy to play cards, I tend to try to find cards that try to find cards that are either easy to play or free plays, right? I did that in Magic with a whole lot of zero cost artifacts and affinity for artifacts, and that was a thing. Of course, I'm not the only one that did it, but I definitely was one of the people that was definitely looking into a lot of stuff you could play for free and then just put it on into one deck. And the idea of playing less lands in a deck. So that's something I did. And then when I played other card games, I tried to find the same kind of stuff in Duel Masters, which Dragon Ball Super is largely inspired by. They have a mechanic called shield triggers, which means you'll have cards in your life area, right? And then when you take damage, you add the card from your life to your hand, just like Dragon Ball Super, right? The difference is that a lot of these cards have what's called a shield trigger. Whenever the card's added to your hand from your life, right, from your shield area, you get an effect. So we take advantage of that, right? Because some of the shield trigger cards were creatures, essentially battle cards, right? So we get to play them for free. So filling up a deck with a whole bunch of battle cards that have shield triggers and other cards like extra cards like sorceries, instants, spells basically that have also shield triggers. So that way, whenever your opponent is dealing you damage, you're playing stuff for free, which gives you free advantage, right? Free, and I went with that route. And they had stuff like haste or rush or whatever. They had effects that states you can attack in the same turn you have, because some card games don't let you attack with a creature or battle card, whatever, right? And the turn in which you play it. The Duel Masters had the whole summoning sickness concept, just like Magic does. So you needed a mechanic that says you can attack the same turn in which you play this card, right? But if you play the shield trigger strategy, like I did, since all your creatures were being played on your opponent's turn every time your opponent dealt you damage, it made it easy for you to attack them. Now, interesting enough, I played another card game recently. Obviously, I played Dragon Ball Super, but Digimon card game also came out, and that was also another game you could play. And they started creating. They have the shield trigger mechanic in the game as well. The whole security trigger or something like that, right? So they got the security effects. So when you deal damage, flip the card over, and you trigger the card, as in play it for free. And then they created Digimons that had security effects, security Digimons. So then, of course, I obviously was going to grab those cards and put them into a deck and made multiple decks using that strategy. So whenever I take damage, I get all these free Digimons that I can attack my opponent with and deal them damage. But because when I deal them damage, they don't get to play stuff for free because they're not playing the same strategy I am, obviously I'll have the advantage. The most important thing is trying to get my opponent's life points down to 0. So I'm always trying to find ways to, win the game, right? Play the game as quickly as possible, faster than my opponent can, and do things that most other people aren't doing. So I'm always looking for free. So if the creators in the card game created free stuff I could play for free, or like a mechanic that I can take, I could take advantage of and exploit and use as my advantage, then I will. And after a long while, sometimes it takes like years. That's crazy, right? For other people to catch on, even though I do put the information out there. So it's not like people can't. It's not like, my ideas are not available I clearly make them available. Facebook groups, Twitter, uh, YouTube, obviously, my YouTube channel. So I put the information out there so people have access to it. And I get a lot of views on a lot of my videos, so the information is out there. And then all it really takes is just a couple people to see my videos, get the information, and then share the information with other people. Use the information, because at some point somebody's going to use one of my ideas, right? And somebody else is going to see it, and they're going to copy and copy and copy, and there's going to be a whole bunch of copying. Especially NetDeck is a really common thing that has been happening for the past 10 plus years. Especially with the advent of the internet. The idea of netdecking, obviously is a common thing. So, ideas will be shared and spread. But what's unfortunate is a lot of times the source where the information came from tends to be obscured sometimes. So I tend to not get a lot of the credit that I rightfully deserve, but whatever. My whole goal is to put information out there, to have a positive influence on the game, to make the game more fun, more challenging. Because I don't, for me, it's very boring if I'm the only one that has this knowledge and this information, these advantages because of knowledge. Right knowledge is power, and then no one else has. So everybody else is playing at a much lower level than I'm capable of playing, because I keep, trying to evolve and try to keep improving in whatever game I play. Master it, however way you want to call it, while everybody else is still playing at a much lower novice or beginner or amateur level. And it'd be boring because it's like, well, damn, all my opponents are not as good as me, so not that much fun. It's more fun when there's a challenge where it's like, okay, everybody's doing different things and trying different things. That's good. I like when people are experimenting and trying things. But with the advent of netdecking, that tends to get in the way. Most people try not to experiment, and they just want to play what's the best, want to play what works, not realizing there's tons of things that works, and a lot of things work way better than the stuff that quote-unquote works, but it's just because it's just easier, more convenient to just use what everybody else is using, to follow certain trends, than to actually be unique and do things differently. I'm not going to go into a whole game theory thing. Just wanted to point out the fact that, like, for some people, this game will probably be the first time they played a card game, so they're not going to have right off the bat the 20 plus years of card game experience that I have. But because I do share my experience, and I'm learning this game, and when we get more stuff, I will post information about this game, deck profiles, obviously, stuff like that, maybe even gameplays. We'll see how that goes, and that will be helpful, obviously, right, to the community, to new players, old players, all this information. Because even veteran players of, let's say of One Piece, for example, after a couple months and years of people playing it, even they can still learn a thing or two, because either they probably played just one card game other than this game, and I played many, so I will have way more knowledge and experience than they do, that I can share, right, and help them improve, get them to a level that's higher than they currently have, right? Because there is a difference between, being good at chess and being a grandmaster, right? You know what I mean? There's novice, right? There's expert, there's master, but then there's grandmaster, right? So, and then there's AI computers that are just virtually unbeatable, right? There's that level, right? Perfection. But you get the point. It's like there's different levels. So some people are just complacent with, mediocre, mid-range level, experience, mid-range, level of playing the game. While some like to excel and go beyond. Like myself, I definitely like to go beyond. I try to get to my final form in whatever I do. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens in this game, what they do to it. So far, we got 4 colors. We got red, blue, green, and purple. So we'll see what those have in store. I'm assuming red is aggro. Green is probably some form of ramp, possibly. Blue, control, counters, that kind of stuff. The ability to stop your opponent from, doing stuff. And purple, probably depends if it's kind of like darkness or something, like it represents darkness, so probably have a lot of kill spells or something like that. Hopefully, it's very defensive color, because I'm partial to the color black and the color blue. So those are the colors I'll be interested in. But I wouldn't be surprised that I play like red, a lot of red decks, make a lot of red decks, because it's more likely going to be aggro. And depending on how the game plays, and if it plays a lot like Dragon Ball Super, yeah, I'm going to be leaning towards red when it comes to competitive play. For more casual, or just more of my play style, more of my preference, then obviously I'll be playing more of a defensive strategy, a little bit more controlling. But we'll see. If it leans a little bit more towards Magic, I won't be surprised that I have more of a blue-black type of build, or maybe a little bit more blue, where I do counter and stuff like that. We'll see. It just depends, but from what I see so far with the whole 8 life possibility, I think it's like Dragon Ball Super, we have 8 life. So then I'm going to, obviously, you have to start with a leader. So the same for this game goes from Dragon Ball Super, which is first 4 damage, usually it's the easiest. The next 2 requires a little effort, and the last 2 tends to be the hardest. So we'll see if this game follows that same pattern, the same concept, the same rule. I mean, that's what I figured out in Dragon Ball Super, that the game is essentially that's simple, that's straightforward, and I apply that to all my decks, and that's how I gauge the skill level, the effectiveness of my decks. If I build a deck and in 4 turns I only dealt 1 damage, then clearly the deck was built wrong. There's something wrong. I mean, first 4 damage in Dragon Ball Super, like I said, is the easiest. Even if I built the deck wrong, I should still be able to do 4 damage, right? That was the whole idea. It's like, that's why I say the first 4 damage is the easiest, because it should be, right? That's no matter what deck I play, no matter what deck I see other people play, because I see other players play, even though it takes them 4 turns to do 4 damage, typically they still dealt 4 damage. So it shows that 4 damage, even with a deck that's not super awesome, super fast, super optimal, whatever, can still deal 4 damage. So even as a bad player, whether you're good at the game or bad at the game, you can do the first 4 damage. Not relatively easy, or at least you're guaranteed to do 4 damage in the game, and then it's just a matter of trying to deal the last 4, right? For me, I got to the point where I could do 7 damage with very little effort, so I'm trying to get to the doing 8 damage with very little effort. That'd be my final form, and I'll be pretty much complete with that. When it comes to skill level, the only other thing besides that would be to play competitively, right? Go to tournaments, top, and stuff like that, and then that's it. And then I would have completed my journey in the card game. And then the same will go for this card game, versus, learning the rules, then learning, how to, build decks, how to maximize them, optimize them, and for me, simplicity is the best. I prefer to try to make the deck as simple as possible, just like how I was talking about in Duel Masters, just like in Digimon, I was going with the whole shield trigger strategy, the whole idea of like my life, or my shields, or whatever you want to call it, right, is my resource, is how I play. You attack me, I get some, I play something. You attack me, I play something. You attack me, I play something. And then I use that stuff that I play for free to beat you, to deal you damage. So now, I can take advantage of the fact that I got stuff for free to attack you with. I'll pay for stuff to attack you with. So I'm gonna deal you double what you deal me. And that's the other, game theory strategy that I use, like in Magic and Duel Masters, and in most games in general, is the idea that I'm always trying to deal my opponent more than they deal me. So if my opponent deals me 1 damage, I try to deal them 2 damage, right? If they deal me 2 damage, I try to deal them 3 to 4 damage, right? I always try to do more to them than they do to me, so it's like a race. So if I deal them more damage than they do to me, I win. It's not too different like when you're playing basketball. Let's say your opponent has a habit of dunking the basket, right? The ball into the basket, and they get 2 points for that. But you make a habit of shooting from like the free throw line or something like that, or from further distance, like halfway court or something, and you're getting 3 points. So as long as you get more 3 points versus your opponent getting 2 points every time they're dunking, right, or doing layups or something, then mathematically, right, that's the whole thing, math, right? Mathematically, you'll reach the final number. Let's say y'all need 10 points to win. You'll reach 10 before your opponent does. Just like in Dragon Ball Super in One Piece, dealing your opponent 8 damage before they deal you is important, right? It's you win when you deal them the 8 before they deal you 8. So what else? Not much. Like I said, there's not that much information out there. We got a trailer, we got groups, we got Facebook page. We got the manual that was translated, so we got an idea. We're gonna have an attack step, a blocker step, a counter step, which is like comboing basically, if I'm right. There's a damage step, obviously, once the battle is over, to determine if your opponent take damage or not. So we have that type of stuff in there. There's extra stuff, on how to activate effects. You can pay to activate effects. There's mechanics. So we don't have a lot of the mechanics right now, but we'll obviously find out more in the next coming weeks, months. The game's supposed to be released this year, so we'll see. Probably released in summer, so maybe 2 to 3 more months from now, it'll probably release. If I'm right, Bandai, Bandai is the creator of the game, so it will, probably release close to summer, because they're, I guess, focusing a little bit more on Dragon Ball Super. They got stuff already in the works, and they're trying to just get through that, and then bring out One Piece, because they don't want One Piece and Dragon Ball Super to compete, or at least take up their resources and time. So they're probably going to wait until Dragon Ball Super ties down, right? Slows down, and taking a lot of their time and resources to promote and support Dragon Ball Super, and then put some time and resources into supporting the One Piece game, so that way it doesn't flop right off the bat, right? So far, for what I see, it looks good. It looks interesting. The basic game mechanics of it, like from what I can see, is like, well, it's a lot like Dragon Ball Super. So, the strategies and the win cons, right? The goal, as they say, right? The goal is pretty much the same. So it's like, all right, I get it. I understand the goal of the game. Now I just need the cards, and obviously once the images drop online, spoilers and stuff like that, I'll start proxying and things like that. Start playing out the game. I got a friend, he's interested in the game, so hopefully he'll play it. What's unfortunate is that it's hard to get him to play Dragon Ball Super, even though we both have decks and we both play the game, as in we both could play each other, but we don't when we should. But oh well, that's for another time. But hopefully now, with this new game, we'll play again. We'll play something, right? And it'll be a lot like Dragon Ball Super. So for me, it'll feel like playing Dragon Ball Super, just with a different IP. And we'll see what the future holds. Right now, I don't know how long this recording is, so I guess I'll just end it there, because not much else to say, since there's not much for the game. Just had some thoughts, just wanted to point out some things, talk about the game, the fact that obviously I will be making videos for it, making decks for the game, playing the game. It'd be interesting, probably be they'll probably put it on Untap, and we'll see. That'd be kind of cool, especially be able to try it out on Untap. I saw that somebody had it on, what is it, damn, I forgot what is it, tabletop simulator on Steam. So you can probably look that up, and there's probably not that many cards. I saw somebody was using it. They probably just put in a couple cards in there just to make their video, but there's not obviously a full version of the game on there yet, but something to keep an eye out for in the near future, a couple months from now. Though, when we get more images of cards, then that somebody will probably just upload a whole bunch of the images to the game, the tabletop simulator, and then you'll be able to actually play out and try it out, because you can play Digimon and if I'm right, Dragon Ball Super on the tabletop simulator from Steam. So just like Untap, you could play I think you could play Digimon. If I'm right, yeah, you could probably play Digimon on Untap. UNTAPI. What? I said it wrong. UNTAP.IN instead of .com, right? So untap.in. So you can go there and play different card games. Dragon Ball Super being one of them. You can play Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic, and Pokemon, and a lot of other games. But most there are some simulators out there you could play instead. I use Edo Pro for Yu-Gi-Oh, and I use MTG Arena, which is an app on the Android store. It should also be on iPhone that I play Magic on. Pokemon Online, they got a client that you can download to your computer. If I'm right, I think they also have an app, so they have a client for the phone, so you could play Pokemon Online on your phone. I think they have that. I'd rather play on a computer. But yeah, ironically, I do play MTG on my phone. It is definitely phone compatible, right? It works really well on there. Haven't played it in a while, but I should try to make some gameplays or something. It's been a while I played it, but yeah, because I've been so focused on playing Dragon Ball Super, and among many other things that I do, I don't just play card games. It's just one of the many things I do, and I'm just in the podcast.